One of my favorite poems is a translation by Ezra Pound of a Chinese poem by Li Po. As the title suggests, the poem is a letter written by a wife to her husband, a river merchant, who has been away on a journey for several months. The river merchant's wife, a letter. While my hair was still cut straight across my forehead, I played about the front gate, pulling flowers. You came by on bamboo stilts, playing horse. You walked about my seat, playing with blue plums. And we went on living in the village of Chokan, two small people, without dislike or suspicion. At 14, I married my Lord Yu. I never laughed, being bashful. Lowering my head, I looked at the wall. Called to 1,000 times, I never looked back. At 15, I stopped scowling. I desired my dust to be mingled with yours, forever and forever and forever. Why should I climb the lookout? At 16, you departed. You went into far Kuto-en by the river of swirling eddies, and you have been gone 5 months. The monkeys make a sorrowful noise overhead. You dragged your feet when you went out. By the gate now, the moss has grown, the different mosses, too deep to clear them away. The leaves fall early this autumn in wind. The paired butterflies are already yellow with August, over the grass in the west garden. If you're coming down through the narrows of the river Kiang, please let me know beforehand, and I will come out to meet you as far as Chofusa. Among the many interesting things about this poem is the rhetorical situation. A wife writes a letter to her husband. What is the goal of her letter? Her message or purpose is perhaps not clear at first, and it takes some piecing things together to appreciate what's going on. We can begin by asking what we can infer about the speaker from clues in the poem. What is her attitude towards her husband? It's not obvious how she feels about him. For example, the marriage sounds sudden. She is too young, too innocent for marriage. The tone, especially of the line, "At 14 I married my Lord Yu," is striking. There should be some commas in there, but Pound runs the words together, speeding up the line as one might rush when one is embarrassed or nervous. And the phrase, "my Lord Yu," is ambiguous. Is the tone submissive, respectful, or bitter? Did she want to marry him, we wonder? Her playmate is suddenly raised to the level of her lord. We can feel her sense of shock at this change. In the next two stanzas, we see her feelings for her husband develop rapidly. Only a year later, at 15, she is seemingly head over heels in love with him. I desired my dust to be mingled with yours forever and forever and forever. The statement is powerful, especially because she rarely expresses her emotions directly. Typically, she relies on suggestion and understatement, using images to convey her emotions indirectly. For example, instead of saying she was unhappy when she got married, she wrote, "Lowering my head, I looked at the wall." But here, she suddenly bursts out in emotion and employs overstatement, repeating the words "forever" 3 times. This stanza makes clear that in the year after her marriage, she quickly transformed from an innocent child to a married adult who is experiencing the intoxicating emotions of love for the first time. At 16, the husband sets out on his journey, and she misses him. Here, she employs suggestive, understated images to convey her feelings. You've been gone for 5 months. The monkeys make a sorrowful noise overhead. This image is interesting because it tells us how she felt, even though it doesn't describe any behavior of her own at all, but rather something nearby that she probably was watching or listening to while at home. She projects her inner state on her surroundings. This technique has been called the pathetic fallacy. The term is credited to John Ruskin, who lived in the mid-1800s, and means the attribution of human emotion and conduct to things found in nature that are not human. For Ruskin and others, the pathetic fallacy, as the name indicates, was seen as a defect, since it is irrational. Non-human things cannot have human emotions. So the thinking went, saying animals or landscapes are happy, kind, sad, or some other emotional or mental state was a confusing and lazy depiction of how things work. What we are really saying when we say the sea looks sad is, I look at the sea and it makes me feel sad, or I associate the way the sea looks with the feeling of sadness. But Pound, thankfully, doesn't follow this rule. In his translation, the wife isn't kept neatly separate from her surroundings, but blends with them. She is sad, so the monkeys sound sad to her. They express her feelings. She does this again later when she writes, "The paired butterflies are already yellow with August. Over the grass in the west garden, they hurt me. I grow older." Of course, the butterflies aren't attacking her. She simply sees the butterflies, which, because they are in pairs, remind her of how she's not with her husband. I love how silly the pathetic fallacy seems in light of this poem. We can tell without difficulty what the wife means. There's nothing confusing about her way of expressing her feelings. It's not bad or irrational. Actually, it's extremely powerful and effective. From these images, we can tell without a doubt that the wife really loves and misses her husband. But is the letter simply saying, "I miss you, please come home soon"? If so, why does she arrange the letter as a short summary of her life, starting with early childhood and moving to the present? Well, if you think about the chronology of the relationship, you realize that her feelings of love for him might not have been obvious to him before he left. When at 14 they get married, she probably seemed upset, so he might have wondered if she loves him. She says she felt in love at 15, and he doesn't leave until the next year. So he might have noticed a change, but given how shy and indirect in her expression she seems, it's possible this wasn't clear for him. She never says, "I love you" directly in the poem, so she probably never said it to him before he left for his journey. More importantly, she may not have realized her feelings for him until he left. Even at 15 and in love, she may not have yet understood what she was feeling, may not have identified it as love. Judging from the genuine, almost raw feeling she expresses in the poem, it seems she's just starting to process her feelings, putting words to them. The letter takes on an additional level of meaning if this is right. Instead of the simple message reminding the husband that she misses him and he should hurry back, it's more urgent. She could be telling him for the first time how she feels, and he might not know this. If he doubts that she loves him, possibly he won't persevere as easily the trials and tribulations of his journey. If he falls into a bad situation, his response might be a little different, depending on if he thinks he has a wife who loves him waiting for him back home or not. So this letter, rather than being sentimental, might mean business. "I have realized that I love you. Come home soon. I need you." And the way she says it, through images and understatement, conveys her message in a powerful way. This goes to show how indirect and poetic language can often say things in a more effective way. This nearly powerless person, a woman in medieval China who must marry when told to, who is practically still a girl, can, through poetic imagery, express herself so powerfully that all who read this poem immediately understand her feelings. Despite never once saying, "I love you," there is no doubt exactly what she feels. I love how words can do this. We have a lot of theories about how language works, but at the end of the day, poetic language remains somewhat mysterious. Somehow, verbal images can explode as feelings. One of my favorite poets, Emily Dickinson, wrote, "If I read a book and it makes my whole body feel so cold, no fire can ever warm me, I know that it is poetry. If I feel physically as if the top of my head were taken off, I know that is poetry. These are the only ways I know it." Wow, that's exactly how poetry works. What can't be said directly often can be said indirectly through images. I've never had the top of my head taken off, but I agree that's exactly what a poem feels like. This faculty, connecting our thoughts and feelings, is a gift and a wonderful part of how we are made. May we use it for good.